US President Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all car and light truck imports into the country. It's due to come into effect on April 2nd. Economists and world leaders are warning that it will be a tax on consumers and have a chilling effect on the global economy.
Dealerships across America are quietly panicking. Ford is sitting on over 100 days of unsold inventory. Audi and BMW are watching demand vanish. Even Nissan is warning that price hikes could crush their last loyal buyers. This isn't seasonal. This isn't temporary. This is the start of something much bigger. Is this just a slowdown? Is the collapse already underway? Or are we headed for the next great recession? The inventory flood. Across the United States, something deeply troubling is happening on dealer lots. At first glance, it may look like business as usual. Pickup trucks are polished, SUVs sit with bright stickers in their windows, and salesmen stand ready. But if you listen closely, there's no buzz, no back and forth, no closing deals, just silence. That's because Ford is sitting on an avalanche of vehicles, and it is not alone. Ford now has more than a 100-day supply of unsold inventory across the country. In normal times, automakers prefer to keep that number around 50 days. That allows dealerships to rotate in new vehicles and keep stock fresh. But Ford has doubled that buffer. That means the automaker is producing far more than the public is buying. Vehicles that once flew off lots are now gathering dust. From F-150s to Explorers, Ford's showrooms and lots are overloaded. In some areas, you can walk a dealer's lot and see row after row of identical trucks, stretching farther than the eye can see. These are not just overstocked by a few extra units. This is a systemic glut. And while supply alone might not be an issue in a hot market, America is not in a hot market anymore. Ford is producing more vehicles than its customers can finance, justify, or afford. This oversupply isn't just an accounting error, it's a symptom, a sign that the company misread the market badly. When rates were low and pandemic stimulus was flowing, inventory was scarce, and dealers charged over sticker. But that world is gone. Today, buyers are more cautious, lenders are more restrictive, and demand has cratered. The inventory flood has begun, and Ford is at the epicenter. But it gets even more confusing when you shift to the luxury end of the spectrum. Real quick, drop a comment if you're seeing empty lots or slowing sales near you. And if this is hitting home, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. The Lexus illusion. Unlike Ford, Lexus maintains one of the lowest day supply figures in the business, roughly 30 days, give or take. That's half the national average and less than 1/3 of Ford's bloated pipeline. On paper, this should be cause for celebration. Inventory is moving, demand is high, and buyers seem to be lining up for new Lexus models, or so it seems. But scratch beneath the surface, and the picture becomes far more unsettling. The question is not whether Lexus is selling cars, it's who is buying them. Because while entry-level car sales are collapsing, luxury buyers have not yet flinched. But that's not a sign of market strength. It's a sign of dangerous polarization. Luxury brands like Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz still attract buyers who can withstand interest rate hikes and inflation shock. Their customers are wealthier, more insulated from macroeconomic forces. When the average buyer is getting priced out, luxury buyers simply adjust. But that means the market is slowly becoming a two-class system, the elite and everyone else. And even Lexus is not immune. Though their supply is tight, that comes after years of constrained production. Many of the vehicles moving now were ordered months ago or are being sold with massive add-ons. And despite strong demand for select models like the RX and IS, prices are climbing to the point of absurdity. A base RX 350 that once sold for $39,000 now routinely approaches $58,000. In some regions, final sale prices exceed $60,000. This creates a dangerous illusion that the market is healthy because luxury cars are selling. In reality, the foundation is crumbling. When a market thrives only on top-tier consumers, the rest of the economy suffers. The illusion may hold for now, but cracks are forming, and they're easiest to see when you compare what used to be an affordable new car, from $25,000 to $55,000. 10 years ago, $25,000 could get you a reliable new sedan, a Honda Accord, a Toyota Camry, maybe even a decently equipped SUV. That number was the benchmark for working-class family, first-time buyers, and everyday commuters. Fast forward to today, and that number doesn't even get you halfway to a new full-size SUV. The average new car price in the United States now hovers around $55,000. For reference, that's more than double what the average was in the early 2010s. Even a base model of a compact SUV, once the affordable family hauler, is regularly priced north of $35,000. With interest rates climbing and wages stagnating, the numbers simply do not add up. up. Buyers are getting squeezed from all sides. Down payments are larger, monthly payments are ballooning, and trade-in values, once a reliable cushion, have begun to fall. The middle-class buyer, who once kept the auto market humming, has quietly exited the showroom. They haven't stopped needing cars, they've simply stopped being able to afford them. As a result, automakers are losing their most loyal and reliable customers. The ones who leased every 3 years, the families who bought base models for their teenagers, the seniors who upgraded every decade. They're gone, and what's left is a thin slice of cash buyers, corporate fleet purchases, and upper-class professionals. Used cars were once the fallback, but even those are now pricing out middle-class shoppers. A used Toyota Corolla from 3 years ago might still sell for over $25,000 despite its mileage and wear. Meanwhile, subprime lenders are retreating, spooked by rising default rates and looming economic uncertainty. The American middle class is being priced out of its own car market, and what is replacing it? Predatory loans, longer terms, and the next big red flag, the $1,000 payment. $1,000 car payments. The final red flag. Not long ago, the idea of paying $1,000 per month for a car loan was absurd, reserved for the wealthy or for ultra-premium vehicles. But today, it is becoming the norm. According to recent data, a growing share of borrowers are signing off on monthly payments that exceed 4 figures. For many, these are not optional upgrades or dream cars. These are basic transportation needs stretched across 84 months or more. For automakers and dealers, this might seem like a win. After all, a sale is a sale, but beneath that sale is a time bomb. $1,000 payments are not sustainable for the average American household. They represent a higher percentage of income than ever before, especially when paired with inflation, rent spikes, and student loans. The rise in these massive payments is not due to better cars. It's due to worse economics. Interest rates have climbed, stretching monthly costs. Prices have soared, even on low-end models, and lenders have extended loan terms to near-decade length just to keep payments looking reasonable. But all this does is create a fragile financial ecosystem, one where a single job loss or emergency could send a borrower into default. Default rates are already creeping upward. Repossessions are climbing, particularly among buyers with high monthly obligations. And when defaults increase, it's not just banks that suffer. The ripple effects hit automakers, insurance company, credit scores, and the broader economy. Because when Americans stop paying for their cars, it's usually a sign that they've stopped keeping up with everything else. In the end, the $1,000 car payment may be the canary in the coal mine. A bright, flashing red light that the system is buckling under its own weight. Buyers can't keep up. Dealers can't afford to lose them, and the economy can't afford what comes next. But if this is the customer's reality, what are the dealerships seeing behind closed doors? That's where the panic truly begins. The Mercedes Mirage. Sleek showrooms filled with glossy Mercedes-Benz sedans and pristine Audi SUVs give the illusion of health. But behind the glass and shine is a reality far more troubling. According to recent inventory data, Mercedes-Benz and Audi now have over a 150-day supply of vehicles sitting on lots. That number alone is a 5-alarm fire. In an industry where a 60-day supply is considered balanced, 150 days means these luxury brands are drowning in unsold stock. Dealerships once considered these high-end cars their crown jewels. Now they are paperweights dragging down the entire network. The problem is not just about pricing, it is about demand. The American consumer is pulling back hard. The very people who once splurged on $70,000 sedans are now rethinking everything. Insurance premiums have soared. Maintenance costs are absurd. Even buyers with deep pockets are balking, not out of necessity, but caution. Dealers have tried everything: special incentives, low-interest financing, even quiet price cuts. Nothing is moving the needle. These vehicles are not selling because the psychology of the buyer has changed. What once symbolized success now looks like financial recklessness. The luxury badge no longer justifies the cost, and brands like Mercedes are finding that prestige does not equal profit. And this glut is not just a dealer problem. The manufacturers are choking on their own overproduction. Plants that once operated on just-in-time models are now stuffed with surplus. If this continues, layoffs in the luxury division will be next. But as the top collapses, what about the middle of the market? The add-on scam. The auto industry is not in the business of selling cars anymore. It is in the business of selling paint protection, nitrogen-filled tires, and bogus security system. When a buyer walks into a dealership today, what they are really buying is a list of add-ons that balloon the final price by thousands of dollars. This is not strategy, it is survival. Let us be clear, dealerships are not doing this because they are greedy. They are doing it because they are bleeding. Front-end margins on car sales are razor thin. In many cases, they are losing money on the sale itself. The only way to stay afloat is to inflate the back end. And that back end is made up of things like window tinting, door edge guards, and market adjustments that have no basis in reality. These tactics are not new, but their intensity is. Add-ons used to be optional. Now they are baked into the deal, often without consent. Buyers find themselves locked into packages they never asked for. The finance office has become a minefield where every signature unlocks a new charge. And in today's high-rate environment, those extras pile on interest, turning a $35,000 car into a $45,000 nightmare. Even reputable dealers are getting in on the act, because if they do not, they will fall behind the pack. Some justify the practice as staying competitive. Others blame the manufacturers for shrinking incentives. But in the end, it is the consumer who pays, literally. And yet, this desperate hunt for profit through add-ons only scratches the surface. The real money, and the real danger, lies in something far more hidden. The back-end money games that dealerships play with manufacturers are coming apart at the seam. Manufacturer money games. Most buyers think dealerships make money by selling cars. That is no longer true. Today, many dealerships survive not on what they sell you, but on what the automaker gives them to move metal. This is the hidden economy of the auto industry, and it is starting to break. Here is how it works. Manufacturers offer bonuses, holdbacks, spiffs, and volume-based incentives. A dealership that sells 100 cars might qualify for a massive payout at the end of the quarter. Sometimes it is $500 per car, sometimes more. The catch? They have to hit targets. And if demand craters or inventory gets stuck, those payouts disappear. Suddenly, the dealership is sitting on a lot full of cars with no path to profit. Worse, many dealers have structured their entire financial survival around those incentives. They rely on them to cover rent, payroll, and debt. And when manufacturers start pulling back, which they are doing now in the face of weakening sales and tighter margins, those lifelines vanish. Some automakers are tightening eligibility requirements. Others are delaying payouts. The result? Dealerships that look profitable on paper are actually hemorrhaging cash in real life. The balance sheets are a lie built on future money that may never come. We are witnessing a domino effect. First, sales fall, then incentives dry up, then the dealership cuts staff, then it folds. This is already happening in rural markets, and it is creeping toward metro areas fast. And as this false system crumbles, manufacturers and dealerships are forced into a new kind of war, one that centers on who pays the cost of doing business in a collapsing market. That war is the pricing war, and nobody wins the pricing war. The auto industry is now facing an existential pricing crisis. On one side, tariffs and inflation have driven costs through the roof. On the other side, consumer demand is crashing. In the middle stand automakers and dealerships, fighting over who takes the hit. Take the recent tariff hikes. Brands like BMW and Audi are suddenly paying more to import vehicles and parts. That cost has to go somewhere. Either the manufacturer eats it, slashing profit margins to dangerous levels, or the dealership does, which they simply cannot afford. Or worst of all, the cost is passed directly to the consumer, who is already priced out of the market. None of these outcomes are sustainable, and so begins the blame game. Automakers accuse dealers of price gouging. Dealers accuse automakers of flooding them with overpriced stock. Consumers, meanwhile, are caught in the crossfire, facing higher prices, fewer incentives, and record loan rejections. This broken pricing model is leading to wild volatility. Some cars are being discounted $10,000 under MSRP just to move units. Others, like high-demand hybrids, are being marked up $5,000 or more. There is no consistency, no strategy, just chaos. And the longer this continues, the more confidence erodes. Buyers are waiting, delaying, watching prices and wondering if they will crash further. That hesitation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. As more buyers pull back, more cars sit idle, and the collapse accelerates. What started as a tariff problem is now a full-blown confidence crisis. And it is rewriting the relationship between automakers, dealers, and buyers in real time. The question is not who wins this war, it is how many survive it. Now that the industry has reached this point of internal collapse, what happens when the financial system that props it all up begins to crack? How banks are choking the market. It used to be easy. Walk into a dealership, pick your car, sign a few forms, and drive off the lot with a loan you could reasonably pay off in 3 to 5 years. But not anymore. In today's collapsing auto economy, financing has become the ultimate barrier to buying a vehicle. Banks, burned from rising delinquency rates and tightening liquidity are pulling back hard. Loan approvals are plummeting, and buyers who would have qualified with ease just a few years ago, according to recent industry reports, auto loan rejection rates have surged past 21%, a number not seen since the height of the last recession. Even applicants with decent credit are being met with stricter standards. Lenders are demanding higher down payments, shorter loan terms, and more proof of stable income. For many middle-class Americans, it is simply too much. The result? Showrooms are quiet, salespeople are idle, and the metal on the lot just keeps aging. The banking sector is choking off the lifeblood of auto sales. Some lenders have quietly exited the auto loan market altogether. Others are raising interest rates far above the national average to hedge against perceived risk. Even automaker-backed financing arms like Ford Credit or GM Financial are trimming approvals. It's not just about credit scores anymore. Lenders are looking at job stability, housing costs, and even regional economic trends. If you live in an area deemed risky, good luck getting a loan. This ripple effect is paralyzing the market. Buyers can't buy, dealers can't sell, automakers can't build, and the entire auto economy begins to seize up like an engine without oil. But as credit dries up, another crisis is quietly bubbling to the surface. The comeback of vehicle repossessions. Repossessions used to be rare. They were cautionary tales, the tragic result of overextending during hard times. But now, repos are everywhere. Flatbed trucks crisscross neighborhoods in the dead of night, hauling away late-model cars and trucks that owners can no longer afford. It is a silent epidemic, and it is spreading fast. Default rates are climbing month after month. According to the latest data, more than 7% of subprime auto loans are now at least 90 days past due, the highest rate in over a decade. Even prime borrowers, once considered bulletproof, are falling behind. Inflation has gutted household budgets. Layoffs in key sectors like tech and logistics are leaving families without the income they counted on. And the rising cost of everything from food to housing has turned car payments into a luxury many can no longer sustain. For lenders, this is a ticking time bomb. Repossessions are costly and damaging. Every vehicle that gets reclaimed represents not just a loss of income, but a new liability. Once a car is repossessed, it must be stored, reconditioned, and resold, often at a steep discount. Multiply that across tens of thousands of units, and you begin to understand the financial hemorrhaging now underway. Dealers are also being hit. Many are sitting on trade-ins they cannot resell because buyers cannot get financing. Floor plan financing, the loans dealers use to buy their inventory, are becoming harder to manage as sales slow down. Vehicles are aging on lots, depreciation is accelerating, and repossessions only flood the market with more used inventory, pushing values down even further. This storm is different than the one in 2008. Back then, the financial system collapsed under the weight of housing debt. Today, it's consumer auto debt that is dragging everything down. And we have only just begun to see the impact. And the worst part, many of these car owners were trapped in a system designed to fail them from the start. When auto debt becomes a life sentence, 6-year loans, 7-year loans, even 8-year loans. These were once rare terms, reserved for the most expensive vehicles. Today, they are standard. Buyers walk into a dealership thinking they're getting a deal. Low monthly payments, attractive financing offers, and a shiny new car. What they leave with is a financial time bomb. The average loan term in America is now 72 months. That means most buyers are still making payments on a car long after it has lost most of its value. By the time they are ready to trade in or upgrade, they are upside down, owing more than the car is worth. This traps them in a brutal cycle of negative equity. To get out, they must either pay thousands out of pocket or roll the debt into their next loan, making the situation even worse. This is no longer a fringe issue. Nearly 1 in 3 car buyers is rolling negative equity into a new loan. That means millions of Americans are essentially renting their cars with interest for nearly a decade. And if anything goes wrong, a job loss, a divorce, a medical emergency, the whole structure collapses. Lenders know this. That is why approval rates are falling, but the damage has already been done. The last 10 years saw a boom in cheap credit, low interest rates, and aggressive lending. Dealers pushed long-term loans to close deals. Banks were happy to collect interest over longer periods. Automakers reported inflated sales. Everyone won. until the economy turned. Now millions are trapped. They cannot sell. They cannot refinance. They cannot even buy a cheaper car because their trade-in is worth less than the balance owed. It is financial paralysis. And for many, it means their vehicle, once a symbol of mobility and progress, has become a prison on wheels. But if you think this is just about car loans, think again. This is not just the collapse of auto credit, it is the collapse of the middle class itself. It's not the car, it's the country. The American car market has always been a reflection of American life. When the middle class thrives, car sales boom. When families feel secure, they upgrade. When credit is cheap and jobs are plentiful, dealerships hum with activity. But today, that engine has stalled. And it is not just the auto industry that's breaking down. It is the entire economic structure it was built on. What we are witnessing is not just a slump in vehicle sales. It is a signal that the middle class, the backbone of the American economy, is being erased. Wages have stagnated. Housing costs have soared. Healthcare is unaffordable. Education debt is crushing an entire generation. And now something as basic as buying a car, a rite of passage, a daily necessity, has become an impossible task. Even modest vehicles now require financing strategies once reserved for luxury homes. Buyers are treated like high-risk gamblers. And those who fall behind face not just repossession, but the destruction of their credit, their mobility, and often their jobs. This is a systemic failure. It is not about personal responsibility or bad budgeting. It is about an economic model that has stopped working for the majority of Americans. And as the auto market collapses, it reveals just how fragile that model really is. This is not just about cars sitting unsold. It is about a generation stuck in financial quicksand. It is about a system that traps people with debt and then blames them for drowning. And it is about a warning to the rest of the economy. If car buyers go down, what comes next? The answer lies not in the next dealership lot or loan application, but in looking back at the last time this country ignored all the warning signs. The inventory crash that sparked recession. It is happening again, but this time it is moving much faster. In the late 2000s, a tidal wave of unsold cars signaled that something was deeply wrong. Dealership lots were overflowing. Factories kept producing vehicles no one could afford. And while experts argued about inflation and lending, it was the auto industry that quietly cracked first. The 2008 financial collapse wasn't triggered by Wall Street alone. It was the breakdown of Main Street, and the car market was its loudest warning sign. Fast forward to today, and the warning lights are blinking red again. Ford now has more than a 100-day supply of trucks rotting on dealer lots. Luxury manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz and Audi are drowning in inventory, with more than 150 days of supply piling up and no buyers in sight. This is not just about high-end vehicles. It's a symptom of widespread overproduction across all segments of the market. Back in 2008, dealerships couldn't adjust fast enough. Automakers misjudged the consumer shift and kept churning out products that no longer fit the economy. By the time they realized demand had cratered, it was too late. Thousands of dealerships shuttered. General Motors and Chrysler needed federal bailouts, and consumers lost confidence, not just in the brands, but in the idea of American economic stability. Now, history is repeating with a brutal twist. Not only are manufacturers repeating the mistake of overproduction, but consumers are more cautious than ever. After 2 years of soaring car payments, rising interest rates, and inflation-driven anxiety, the average American buyer has checked out. The inventory is there, but the demand isn't. What's different this time is the speed. The 2008 collapses unfolded over months. Today, thanks to real-time data and digital car shopping, shifts in buyer behavior are felt immediately. When people stop buying, the entire chain, from factory to financing to dealership, feels the squeeze within weeks. This isn't a slowdown, it's a stall out in motion. And as the cracks in the system widen, they expose deeper weaknesses that were there all along. But to really understand how far this fall can go, we have to rewind even further to a decade where arrogance almost erased American car culture completely. How Japan ate Detroit's lunch. The 1980s were a time of swagger in Detroit. American automakers still ruled the roads, but behind the scenes, they were making fatal mistakes. Complacency set in. Leadership at Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler assumed their dominance was permanent. Innovation slowed. Quality declined. And while American brands were resting on their reputation, Japan was quietly perfecting the art of efficient, reliable, and affordable manufacturing. Then came the ambush. Brands like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan entered the US market with cars that didn't just compete, they embarrassed the status quo. They offered better fuel efficiency, longer-lasting engines, and tighter build quality, all at a lower price point. American consumers responded with their wallets. Imports soared. Domestic sales plunged. The big three were caught off guard, and the damage was irreversible. The parallels to today are chilling. Once again, American automakers are under siege, not by Japan this time, but by their own inability to adapt. While Ford gambles on oversized trucks and GM dabbles in electric rebranding, global competitors are moving with ruthless precision. South Korea's Hyundai and Kia are pushing bold design and hybrid technology. China's BYD is aggressively entering new markets. Even Vietnam's VinFast is outpacing expectations with electric innovation. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturers remain tangled in bureaucracy and outdated thinking. Internal disputes over EV strategy, reliance on outdated dealer networks, and dependence on government subsidies are weakening their edge. The same pattern that opened the door for Japan in the 1980s is now cracking open the U.S. auto industry for global competitors once again. Detroit didn't lose because it couldn't build cars. It lost because it thought it didn't have to change. And if history has shown us anything, it's this. The world never waits for the American auto industry to catch up. But when the government tried to fix the collapse last time, their so-called solution made things even worse. The cash for clunkers mistake. In the aftermath of the 2008 crash, the U.S. government launched an emergency program to stimulate the auto market, Cash for Clunkers. The idea was simple. Give consumers thousands of dollars to trade in old vehicles and buy new, more fuel-efficient models. On paper, it sounded like a win-win. Help the environment, boost sales, and save factories. What actually happened was far more destructive. Cash for Clunkers created a short-term sugar high. Dealerships were flooded with traffic. Sales spiked, but only temporarily. Consumers who were planning to buy later were simply pulled into the present. And once the program ended, the floor dropped out. Demand collapsed again. The auto industry hadn't recovered. It had been artificially inflated only to crash twice as hard. Worse, the program decimated the used car market. Over 600,000 functional vehicles were destroyed. That shrank the supply of affordable used cars and drove prices sky high, especially for low-income buyers. Years later, the ripple effect could still be felt. The program didn't just fail. It permanently distorted supply, demand, and pricing across the entire automotive ecosystem. And yet, with new panic setting in across dealership lots, there's already quiet talk in Washington about bringing back similar schemes. Stimulus checks, EV tax boosts, government rebates for trade-ins, all aimed at reviving a market that is not sick. It is exhausted. But as we learned from the last time, artificial demand does not solve structural rot. It covers it up. It pushes the collapse one step further down the road. This time, there may be no road left to push it down. Which brings us to the brutal, final question. If automakers can't survive and consumers can't afford to buy, then who's left in this industry at all? The dealership extinction event. Dealerships were once the cornerstone of American car culture. More than just places to buy a vehicle, they were local institutions, family-owned, community-driven, generational. But today, that model is crumbling before our eyes. As inventory piles up and buyers disappear, dealerships are facing a grim reality. Their profits are evaporating. Manufacturer incentives are drying up. Interest rates are squeezing financing options. And the core of their business model, physical inventory sales, is becoming obsolete in a world shifting toward direct-to-consumer delivery and digital-first retail. The pressure isn't just economic. It's existential. Tesla proved that a car maker can bypass the dealer network entirely. Companies like Rivian, Lucid, and even Ford's own EV division are testing direct sales in select states. Consumers are demanding transparency, convenience, and online access. And once digital buying becomes the norm, the sprawling dealership infrastructure becomes an anchor, not an asset. For the first time in over 100 years, we are watching the dealership model buckle under its own weight. Smaller independent dealers are already closing their doors. Larger dealer groups are slashing staff, consolidating locations, and begging automakers for support. But there may be no rescue coming. Because when consumers stop buying, when automakers stop building, and when trust in pricing, value, and stability disappears, dealerships become the last middleman in an industry that no longer wants a middleman. This is not just a market correction. It's an extinction-level event. The American auto industry isn't just shifting, it's shaking to its core. But what do you think? Is this the beginning of a total collapse or just a painful reset? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone. And if you want to stay ahead of the chaos, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.